Hi guys and girls, and welcome to Magic. So in this video I'm going to show you how user registrations works in Magic. Here I have my backend cloudlet. Now of course I can expand management. I can open up users and roles, and I can manually create a user called foo with a password of whatever. Actually, let me create the foo password just to have something like ridiculously simple to remember. Now I have created a new user in my backend. If I want to now, I can expand the tools, open up endpoints in a different tab, and I can filter on /off/ at which point you will see I have an authenticate endpoint where I can pass in foo as my username and foo as my password and simply invoke it, at which point I'm given a valid JWT token back that I can test at jwt.io by pasting it into this text box here at the bottom. You'll see my name and my expiration and all that beautiful stuff. And of course, if I associate this user with multiple roles, such as, for instance, guests, and let's add another role, translator, then when I'm invoking the endpoint, I'm also getting my role declaration back from the authenticate endpoint, as you can see here, guest and translator. And I can also associate extra info with the user, being, for instance, name, John Doe, save it, close, re-authenticate, which point now you see I get extra info that's associated with my user back from the authenticate endpoint. However, that's probably relatively useless unless you intend to manually handle your users. You probably want to have some sort of like registration endpoint in Magic. And actually Magic contains that registration endpoint. If you see now, I'm still filtering on /off/, and then further down here on the page, I can find a register URL. Let me first delete this foo user before I illustrate it. And let me pass in a username being John, password being, and this needs to be 8 characters long at the very least. Then let me just delete front-end URL, template, and subject, and reCAPTCHA response, and extra for that matter too, and invoke it. And I now have a new user in my Magic backend cloudlet, and I can go back to my users here, and we can see this user. However, at this point, the user belongs to the unconfirmed role. Now, the unconfirmed role is probably one of the most restricted roles that exists in the system. And of course, at this point, I can manually delete the role association and add the user to, for instance, the guest role, etc. However, there exists an even more intelligent way. So let me delete this user and re-invoke the endpoint. However, this time I'm going to do Control-Z, and then I'm going to be passing in some additional arguments here. Now, the first thing I want to do is I want to pass in a front-end URL. I don't really need to do that. However, if I have a front-end client somewhere that's capable of handling the query parameters that your cloudlet automatically associate with the front-end URL, you can actually create a link in your email templates that allows the user to click that link and then double opt-in, confirm his email address. Now, the email template that's being sent can be overridden by the front-end client as a relative path inside of your cloudlet's file system. However, I'm just going to delete this one, and then let me just add a subject being hello there from my cloudlet, ! Since I don't have reCAPTCHA configured, I can just delete it. It's going to simply ignore it. And then name, John Doe, email, john@servergardens.com. You see, if I provide an email extra field, then something interesting is going to happen as long as I have configured an SMTP server on my cloudlet. And I happen to have configured an SMTP server for this particular cloudlet. I can't show it to you because it contains like a secret password. I'm using SendGrid on this cloudlet, so I cannot show you the SMTP configuration, but trust me, it's there. So if you configure your cloudlet to use a valid SMTP connection through your configuration menu item under here, configuration, then your cloudlet is going to behave the exact same way as mine. Now I can open up my email address, and here you see. As you can see, first of all, here's the subject. If I had overridden the template email to use, I could also have used a completely different template email. And of course, if you want to do this, you probably want to start out by copying the default template email, which you can find inside of your file system. However, I didn't do that. So this is like the default. If I now click verify email address now, then this is going to point me at some point to my Magic Cloudlet, but I can also copy and paste the following verification code. If you don't have a front end, let's say you're, for instance, using an iOS app, at which point you don't really have a URL to click, right? But then I can use the code and I can go back to my Magic Cloudlet here, and I can find the endpoint whose name is verify code. Before I do that though, let me show you my users here. Here's John, is unconfirmed, right? Let me pass in John as the username and code, invoking it. And as you can see here, this one returns a JWT token, so you don't need to verify after you have confirmed the code. It's automatically being done. And it also returns the extra fields, the same way the authentication endpoint does. However, more importantly, if I now go back here, watch carefully, unconfirmed here now, if I refresh and I select John, he's a guest. So now the email address has been actually verified that it belongs to John, and we can trust it because somebody either clicked the link or typed in the verification code that were being transmitted to the email address the user gave us while registering. So this allows you to do what's commonly referred to as double opt-ins using your Magic backend cloudlet. And then, of course, there's a ton of other HTTP endpoints that are associated with registrations and such as, for instance, email taken. Okay, remember we had john@servergardens.com. Let's invoke it. As you can see here now, email taken. If I pass in john2@servergardens.com, email available. However, if you want to have a look at the complete documentation for user registrations, you should click documentation here. You should click the hamburger button here in the top right corner. You should find registration and authentication here, and carefully read everything here where it explains to you how you can replace the template email, send reset password links, etc., etc., etc. So this is the official documentation explaining everything related to user registrations. Anyways, that was it for this particular session. Remember to like, subscribe, hit the bell, and share the video with your friends. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.